Hey everybody, it's Muscle Car Campy and we're back with another AMX. Yes, this time a 1968. This one with a 390 and a 4-speed. It's a day 2 type of car. It's still owned by the second owner who used to drive it to his job at Ford Motor Company after racing it all weekend. Before we take a deep dive into this black beauty, I want to remind you, hit the subscribe button and ring that bell so every time a new video goes live, you get notified right away. What's really cool on this car is that it has a lot of the really interesting pieces that it had back in the day. Mallory ignition, Mallory Unilight distributor, Edelbrock torquer intake manifold. It does have a Holley carb on it, but for the most part the block is original to the car. Very stout, these 68 blocks. It's a really cool piece. As we said, this car had enough oomph back in the day to power to 1150s at 118, so it was definitely getting with the program. I'm here with the owner of this 68 AMX, the legendary, John Coletti. John, this is a really weird way you got to your position in life. Back in the mid-60s, you were known as Mopar because you were partners on a Hemi Plymouth, I believe?
Hemi Plymouth Fury, yeah.
Hemi Plymouth Fury, and then you go out and you buy a 68 AMX in 1970 while you're an engineering student. And what was the reason that you really went out and got the AMX?
When I was in engineering school, that's when I learned that it was all about power to weight, weight transfer. When this thing came out with the short wheelbase, the big engine, the lightweight, this thing was a monster. Every car that came out in 68, all the factory cars, when they left the starting line, wheels up in the air, and I thought to myself, it don't get any cooler than that.
Now, you actually raced this when it was stock, when you got it. You bought it from a lawyer.
Yeah.
How fast was it when it was stock?
It would run around 14.3 to 14.5, you know, in the mid-90s, maybe 96, 97 miles an hour.
So, I imagine the first mods you made back in the day were things, headers, gears, things like that.
Yeah, I had a what is it, RB4 high-rise manifold I put on the car. The headers, like you said, the camshaft. Then I got it into the high 13s, and it was running good for a couple of years. That was in those days that was pretty adequate.
But then it wasn't enough, right? It's never enough.
It wasn't enough. And as I was telling you, what you were supposed to do in those days was when you got married, is you were supposed to get rid of your muscle car and get a Ford station wagon. I told my wife, I ain't selling the AMX. As a matter of fact, I'm going the other way. I'm gonna go build it up. So that's when I went in. We got married in December. In March, the car was all apart. Yeah, we started building it up.
Well, you know, you were a high-paid spark plug engineer for Ford back then,
Oh,
so
yeah. I was making what, $800 a month or something.
But you know, and you could use this because there's a lot of room in the back of the AMX. You could put your groceries back there, along with your slicks and.
Oh yeah. No, groceries or slicks, not both.
Not both. Not both.
Yeah.
But what made you keep this car now? It's been 52 years, almost 53 years. What do you think kept it all those years?
Well, first off, I courted my wife in this car, so I've always had that emotional attachment to the car. We had a lot of good nights in this car, trust me.
Yeah.
And then secondly, it's always been a fairly unique car.
Definitely don't see them every day.
You don't see these every day, and there was a lot of things about this car that I absolutely loved. The handling I hate. A lot of other parts I loved.
Yeah, they were not supposed to be, even though it was billed as a sports car, they weren't known for their handling with the kingpin front suspension. No. But as you said, with that short wheelbase, man, you could get all that power over the rear wheels.
I used to have, at the lights on grass shit, I used to sidestep the clutch at 6,000 RPMs. And when the guy finally pulled up to me, you know how great it was to be able to say, you know, you just got beat by a Nash.
That's right. This thing, now eventually you put high compression pistons in it, got
big
it down,
cams.
Big cam,
Yeah.
mid 11s. Now it's kind of detuned a little back to more of a street car, but it's still pretty rowdy. When you started it up and we were driving around in it, it's a pretty rowdy little car.
Yeah, I suspect she probably runs, you know, high 12s, low 13s right now. But at least now it's got some vacuum, so the brakes work, and you know, things like that. It idles. It starts up more reliably with the high lift cam that it had and the overlap. You know, the high lift overlap. I mean that was just not disputable.
No. So I'm guessing at this point there's nothing that would get this car away from you. It's a part of your life.
It'll be part of my estate. It'll get away from me.
Yeah, well,
I gotta go.
You'll get away from it, not the other way around.
I gotta go first.
This thing sounds a little rowdy.
Well, the guy put a new, I had a high lift cam that had a lot of overlap, and I had never had any vacuum. So when I had the engine redone, the guy took the compression down so I could use regular gas now. But he put this camshaft that's got one of those high ramp cams in it.
Yeah.
So it's more of a square kind of a cam, and it's got good torque.
I like how you put the odometer gauges in the dash. You got some tunes there, cassettes. Fancy.
Hey, anything for you, Jim.
Hey, you got to have tunes. You can't just, drive around.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you something. Watch this. I gotta go to 17 out here. Nobody's coming, so it doesn't matter. If I go to 580, when I was cruising in the old days, there was CKLW was the big station in Detroit. So now in Chatham, Ontario, they kept the same call signals, and this is the Canadian station. And this is what we used to, and they just play from the original headquarters of CKL. So it's just like the old days.
I love the story of this car. You're an engineering student, right?
Yeah, that's what made it different.
And you said, what's the most power to weight ratio I can afford to buy? And you bought the car from a lawyer in Detroit.
Yeah, who had hemorrhoids and hated the ride of the car.
For those who don't know the legend of John Coletti, he was an engineering student, got a job at Ford, and I know this for a fact, his father was so proud of him because he could wear a white shirt to work every day. He was a white-collar guy. This was a big thing for an Italian immigrant family.
Absolutely.
How did he feel about you going out hot rodding and driving race cars on weekends?
My dad had a very simple rule. You know what his rule was? I don't want to hear anything. When I'd leave the house, I don't want to hear anything. And I knew what that meant.
Be a good boy, not too good. Don't bring the police around.
Yeah, I don't want to hear anything. That was it.
His car really held its own back in the day. You had it modified. It was running 11s at the drag strip, 117 miles an hour.
118 was the best ever.
You were probably part of that big street racing scene in Detroit back in the 60s and 70s.
Absolutely.
And, it is kind of funny now. Again, you turned the world on its ear when you were the head of Ford Special Vehicle Team. You helped really save the Mustang in the early 90s. And here you are all these years later, cruising around in your original AMX, your second owner. I mean, do you ever think back and say, how did I go from there to here? And
I always think about that. It tells me that life is nothing, but you never know when you're at a crossroads in life, and you make small decisions that in retrospect end up being pretty big, right? But you don't know it at the time.
No.
Everybody says, well, if I'd have known this, I'd have done that. Well, nobody knows at the time. So, you just kind of go with your gut instinct, I think. I had to upgrade the discs up front now because the car originally came with drums all the way around. I think there was a disc brake package available from the factory as part of a Go package or something, but this car didn't have it. Some other hooker headers. Hooker had some deal going with him, and I went in there and he says, "Yeah, you want to buy my old set?" I only paid like $50 for it. They used to do that in those days because none of us had any money. Yeah, it was Pete's Patriot. I think he used to run out of an AMC dealership in Detroit, near Grosse Pointe somewhere.
Okay. Sanssouci, without a care.
That's what it's all about, man.
What are you using for shocks and stuff? Just original equipment stuff?
Yeah, and I got air shocks on the back because I like having a little bit of attitude on the car. So
Yeah.
the only reason they're not for ride or handling or anything. I just like the attitude of the car.
What gears you got in there? About 390s?
In the back?
Yeah.
410.
410s. I knew they weren't 308s.
Originally, AMC guys would give you a lot of drag strip help.
Yeah.
There was a guy called Bob Swain. You'd be able to write to him or call him, and he'd send you, faxes on here's the hot setup. On this car, they wanted you to go to a big 29-inch slick, but you had a radius to wheel wells to do it, and I wasn't willing to cut up the sheet metal, right? So I found, again, the engineer in me, I found the set of M&H slicks, wrinkle walls.
Yeah.
And they were 25.5 inch in diameter. They were small, I mean, diameter wise, they were actually smaller than my street tires.
Yeah.
But on the drag strip, in combination with the 410, it was like having a 456 rear end, and the car would run just fine. I mean, that was a good combination for this car, for the kind of speed it went through the trap set and the RPM that I would shift at. It turned out to be a decent setup. I mean, that tire, thank goddamn it, H, because I did not want to radius this wheel.
No.
But that's what they chose. All the AMXs, if you look at the 70s, 68 through 70 AMXs, all of them, they were run, most of them, they radius the wheel wells.
John, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to share this car with Muscle Car Campy. Don't forget, subscribe to Muscle Car Campy. We got a lot more great videos coming down the road. Thank you much.